So let me just quickly share my screen.
Just a note, Slavica, as well, I will keep an eye on the chat. If you would like to put your questions in the chat, feel free to do that as well.
Great. So can everyone see my Canvas instance? Awesome. So the first thing I would like to say is that the Proctorio extension runs on the Google Chrome browser, and you will need to use Chrome to set up exams. Also, to take proctored exams, students must use Google Chrome to access the exam and have the Proctorio extension installed. And if you go to your course, for example, and now you want to enable Proctorio, first you need to make sure that you're using Google Chrome. I'm using Google Chrome right now, and also you need to add the extension. Right now, Proctorio is disabled in this course. I want to enable it. I will go to settings and then check navigation. And here you will see secure exam proctor. I will just simply drag that and I have to save it. And if you're not having Chrome extension, you will see secure exam proctor here. You can click on that. And from here, you can add the Chrome extension. Just have to confirm it once again. And you will visit the official Chrome Web Store. And here you will have this button saying Add to Chrome. I already have this extension. I'm just going to enable it. And you can see here this small shield icon. This means I successfully added this extension to my Chrome browser. Sometimes Chrome will hide all extensions here. If you do a puzzle piece, Proctorio will probably be unpinned if you're adding it for the first time, and you won't be able to see it here. So if you want to add it to your toolbar, please check this small puzzle piece and then just pin your extension. This is important because this is how you can start the live chat with our support team, and also how students can start the live chat. If I go back to my course, reload the page, and now you will notice that secure exam proctor is not visible anymore, and here you're having this message saying secure exam proctor plugin successfully installed. Please return to your course. If I go back and go to my quizzes.
Hey, Slavica, sorry to cut in. Your audio changed a bit from when you started. Did something happen with your input?
No.
It's kind of hard to hear you.
I think it has to do with my internet connection.
Okay.
Are you able to hear me now?
That's better. That's a little louder. And then there's a request if you can just talk a tiny bit slower.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
So if I'm going to quizzes, and now I want to enable Proctorio. I will check here. And right now we are working with classic quizzes. So you have to check classic quizzes, and also we're expecting to work with new quizzes as well. If I check classic quizzes, then submit. I will have to name my exam. And if I scroll down, also I need to check time limit. Everything up to 7 hours is acceptable. So if let's say I'm going to add 45 minutes, scroll down, and here you will see Enable Proctorio Secure Exam Proctor. I'm going to check that, and you will see here, require an access code. You do not need to change anything from here. This access code is added automatically. This means you successfully enabled Proctorio, and also students will be required to use Proctorio when taking the exam. They cannot take the exam if they do not have the Proctorio Chrome extension and if they're not using Google Chrome. And from here, I can select Proctorio settings. And you will see save profiles, Proctorio exam settings, and Proctorio behavior settings. I will explain save profiles in a bit, and Amy will focus on Proctorio behavior settings and explain Proctorio gradebook. But now I would like to talk about Proctorio exam settings. If I expand this, you will notice that we have recording options, lockdown options, verification options, and in-quiz tools. The recording options, here you will see record video is the first file here, and it will use the student's camera to look for hand movements during the exam. And also this will help you to know if the student is looking at the exam screen or around the room. With the record audio, Proctorio can capture all sounds in the room using the student's computer microphone. It can also capture the background noise or voices that can indicate communication with another person in the room. With record screen, Proctorio can capture the whole student screen during the exam, and also you will be able to see everything that the student is doing during the exam, including visiting unauthorized websites or using unauthorized programs. With record web traffic, Proctorio will create a record of every URL the student visits during the exam, and it will also provide you with links to access the visited pages. You will be able to see that in the Proctorio gradebook. With the record room, this will prompt the students to give a 360-degree panorama of their exam environment by panning the camera around the room. If I click on this, you will notice that we have Scan at Start and also Intelligent Scan. This file here, Intelligent Scan, will prompt students to do the 360-degree panorama of their exam environment at the beginning and again throughout the exam, depending on the length of the exam. Also, certain suspicious behaviors will trigger additional room scans. Scan at Start will ask them to be done at the very beginning. And also, this will happen after the exam loads in Canvas and the timer starts running. So if you're turning on this option, then we recommend adding additional minutes. And also with recording options, for example, if you turn on record video and record audio, then students will need to have working cameras and microphones. They will go through something we call exam pre-checks, where we are checking their equipment. If you select record video, record audio, record screen, they will have to allow their cameras, microphones, and share their screens. If they fail, then they will not be able to pass exam pre-checks, and therefore they cannot start their exam. If that happens, they can always start a live chat with our support team. They can do that by simply selecting this shield icon, and then this option here that says live chat. Our support team is available 24/7, and our support team can help. So they can help students to resolve any technical difficulties they might have. Once they successfully pass exam pre-checks, they will see one window, and once they accept, their exam will begin, and also their timer will start. So their timer will not start while they are going through exam pre-checks. Scrolling down, we have lockdown options. And the first option here that we have is force full screen. This will force exam to be taken in full screen mode. Students will not be able to minimize the exam. They will be removed from it. And also the length of time before a student is removed from the exam can be adjusted, as you can see here. We have lenient, moderate, and severe. Lenient will allow students to be out of full screen for 30 seconds before being kicked out of the exam. Moderate will allow students to be out of full screen for 15 seconds before being kicked out of the exam. And lastly, severe will not allow students to be out of full screen at all, they will be kicked out of the exam immediately upon exiting full screen. The next option here we have is only one screen, and this prevents students from having multiple monitors during the exam. If you are selecting record screen, then we highly recommend selecting only one screen as well. Because with only one screen, they will have to physically unplug any additional monitors they might have. Next, we have disable new tabs. And with disable new tabs, you can control whether or not the student can access additional tabs in their browser during the exam. If no new tabs is allowed, then students won't be able to open any new tabs or windows within the browser during the exam. If you select Inquiz Links Only option, then your students will not be able to use any new tabs except for the links you put in the exam. And tabs allowed is selected by default. Next, we have close open tabs. This will close all open tabs at the beginning of the exam, and also this will restore all their tabs once they submit their exam. Disable printing will not allow any printing during the exam. Disable clipboard will prevent students from using a computer clipboard, meaning your students will not be able to copy information from outside the quiz to bring into the exam, and it also prevents them from copying any questions from the exam. Next, we have disable exemptions, but you do not need to worry about this style. This is something that we're just using when testing Proctorio. You do not have this. Next, we have block downloads, and block downloads does what it says. It blocks any downloads during the exam. Clear cache removes any trace of the exam. Disable right click will prevent them from using right click, so they will not be able to do what I'm doing right now. You can see, and with this they cannot use any option that comes with the right click. Lastly, here we have prevent reentry, and prevent reentry gives you several options as well. If I click on it, you will see that we have allow reentry, and no reentry. With allow reentry, it can happen that, for example, students are being logged out from the exam, and with this option, they will be able to go back and resume that attempt in progress. So let's say, for example, if they start the exam and they lose their internet connection after 15 minutes, they will be logged out from the exam. They can go back with allow reentry as long as there is still time. And then once they go back, they simply reload the page. They will have to go through exam pre-checks once again, but they will be able to resume that attempt in progress with this option. And you will be able to review every attempt in Proctorio Gradebook. Next is reentry with agent, and with this, students will need to contact our 24/7, 365 support staff and start the live chat with them in order to get back into the exam. And they are doing that by simply clicking on this shield icon and then live chat. And lastly, here we have no reentry, and with no reentry, you are not allowing them to go back and resume that attempt in progress. If they are logged out from the exam for whatever reason, they cannot go back and re-enter that attempt. They will have to contact you, and only through your discretion get the second attempt. Proctorio support cannot add additional time or just give second attempt. Only instructor can do that. And lastly, here we have verification options. These settings will ensure that the student's hardware will create the best results for you to review. The first option here we have is verified video, and verified video will validate that the student has the webcam installed. Also, ensure that it is functioning properly and that their face is clearly visible within the recording. This will also ensure that quality data is received in the Proctorio Gradebook. Verified audio is to check whether the microphone is functioning properly. Verified desktop will make sure that the recording is working and that the resolution is up to date. And with Verify ID, will require students to have a valid form of identification to show before entering the exam. This will allow you to confirm that the exam is being completed by the person registered for the course, and also we leave this to the institution to decide what they want to use. We've seen that institutions are mostly using school IDs and state IDs. Verify signature will prompt each test taker to sign a statement acknowledging their commitment to academic integrity prior to an exam. And these two options you also do not have. They're just using this when testing our extension. So you do not need to worry about that. And lastly here, we have in quiz tools. There are two calculators, basic and scientific. And also we have whiteboard, basic whiteboard that can be used as on-screen scratch paper. But it is basic, as it says, and you will not be able to download or export this whiteboard. You can just check it if you have a record screen. Once you play that recording, you will be able to see what they use this whiteboard for. And lastly here, let's say you want to use the same set of settings for every future exam with Proctorio. You can create your own profile. You can select icon, also you can name it. And if you're having multiple profiles, you can make one of them your default profile. I will select this, save, and you can see it here. So next time I want to enable Proctorio, I do not need to go through Proctorio exam settings every single time. I can simply select which profile I want to use, and my settings will be selected automatically, as you can see. And since this profile is my default profile, once I enable Proctorio, this profile will be automatically selected. And the important thing to know is also that once the first test taker takes the exam, all these Proctorio exam settings will become locked. You will not be able to change Proctorio exam settings after the first student takes the exam. However, you can change Proctorio behavior settings, and Amy will explain this in a bit. But with Proctorio behavior settings, you are selecting what you want to be flagged as suspicious. And this is fully customizable, so you can set your behavior settings before they start taking the exam, and also you can change behavior settings after they finish their exam when you are just reviewing Proctorio gradebook. And Amy will give a detailed explanation of Proctorio behavior settings once she shows Proctorio gradebook. Do you have any questions for me right now?
Slavica, that's actually a question in the chat that I'm just typing out the answer, but I thought maybe you could cover this. Professor Allen's asking, when you use the Canvas copy to option to copy a quiz from one course to another, a quiz with Proctorio added gets copied as the name of the exam with remotely proctored in parentheses. Are there any issues with permissions or entering the exam when it is copied from one course to another?
No, you can just simply copy the exam and it should work as expected, but just please make sure that you're doing that with Google Chrome that has the Proctorio Chrome extension.
But those default Proctorio settings will follow that exam, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So as long as it's got remotely proctored in the title, then that means that Proctorio is enabled, and then I would just verify, but it should keep those same default settings as well.
Yes, it should. However, if you're having any additional questions, you can always start the live chat with our support team. We are offering support for instructors as well, and you can get an instant help. Yes, of course. Any other question for me? Okay,
Now there was
I guess.
questions in the chat about seeing the student side of things. So I will, I'm going to show you how, reviewing the Proctorio gradebook, and then once we're done with that, we can review exactly what the student will see when they log into a Proctorio enabled exam.
Yes, yes, Amy, I can show that once you finish the Proctorio gradebook.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and share.
Let me just.
And you should be able to see my Canvas.
Yes.
So once at least one student has taken the exam, when you click into the quiz, you should now have the option to view the Proctorio gradebook, and it's going to be located under the Canvas Speed Grader. So if you click on View Proctorio Gradebook, you're going to have a view similar to this. It's going to have a kind of a high-level overview of all of the attempts on the exam. It's going to show you the student's name, their image, the submission time. It'll tell you which attempt this is for that student. It will pull the score directly from Canvas. It will show you any annotations, which are notes you can leave for yourself or for someone else can leave for you. It will show you the abnormalities. As soon as 3 or more students have taken the exam, the abnormalities will start to compare this student to the class. And finally, you'll see the suspicion level. This is going to be percentage based, color coded, and the most suspicious attempts will appear at the top of the list here. You may also have an additional icon here. If you hover over it, it'll tell you what to be on the lookout for, in this case, a suspicious ID. Up above here, you'll see this key, delete gradebook. I caution you, if you click this, you get one chance to confirm. If you click OK, it will delete your entire gradebook. So please use this button with caution unless you absolutely want to delete the entire gradebook. Before I click into the individual attempts, I'm going to go ahead and just go through these tabs at the top here. The first one is the Proctorio settings. Slavica had covered the exam settings, which you'll see are now locked now that the exam's been taken. You can still view those, but they are not able to be adjusted. I'm going to review the Proctorio behavior settings, and these settings can be adjusted at any time. You can set them ahead of time or after the quiz. If you come in, like in this case, it looks like there's some pretty suspicious attempts here. You can adjust it to one of these presets here. And if you go back in, you'll see it immediately adjusts the suspicion levels. So say you had a pretty high behavior setting set, like a moderate, and then you came in and you realized it was all pretty suspicious. Oh yes, it was supposed to be an open note exam. So you would expect for students to have a little more activity throughout the exam, a lot of head and eye movement, navigating away. And if you come back into the gradebook, you'll see that it immediately adjusts those percentage levels. The recommended tile, I think this is a good place to start. This will set the behavior settings based on the exam settings that you have selected for your exam. Since we know that you are the best judge of the test taking environment that you're looking for, you can start with this, and then if it feels like you still need to adjust some things, you can always come down and adjust these frame metrics. You'll notice if you start adjusting those on your own, it automatically switches to the custom setting, but this will set the frame metrics based on your behavior settings and allow you to adjust them. So here, these are the frame metrics that you can adjust. Navigating away would be, you know, if it was supposed to be a closed book exam, students that navigate away would be deemed more suspicious. Keystrokes can be adjusted. Say you had a multiple choice or true false exam, you wouldn't expect there to be a ton of typing throughout the exam. So you could dial that up. Copy paste is pretty obvious. If you don't want students bringing anything into the exam, then that would be very suspicious. Browser resize, if you had the force full screen enabled, you know, this shouldn't be much of an issue, but if you didn't, if you allowed open research, probably it wouldn't be as suspicious for you. Audio levels, again, this is going to be the white noise and the background noise. This is kind of, you know, if you expect it to be crystal clear, quiet in a testing environment, especially with students at home, you know, some students read questions out loud. This is something you kind of gauge as the semester goes on. Certain students will just have more quiet environments than others. If it's an open note or collaborative exam, I definitely would expect the audio levels to not be deemed as suspicious there. Head and eye movement, this is going to be captured by the webcam. If a student is doing a lot of looking up and down, you may determine, oh, if this student was allowed to use scratch paper or a calculator, this may not be as suspicious of an activity. Multi-face will let you know if there are other students in the camera frame or another face in the camera frame. If students were allowed to collaborate, you wouldn't deem it as suspicious. Again, if a student had an additional person in the room, maybe for accessibility reasons, you could dial this down to check their percentage levels and just make sure everything else was on par. Leaving the room, this is still in beta. The camera will flag the student for suspicious activity if they do leave the room currently. It's just not called leaving the room. I believe it's looking away, but you'll be able to see in the camera frame if the student actually leaves the room. Down below is the abnormalities. So once more than 3 students have taken the exam, it starts to kind of compare student behavior throughout the entire class. So a good rule of thumb is any of the abnormalities here that correspond with these frame metrics, you can always select just to give you kind of how each student did right here and then how they did compared to the class. Those will be presented for you in the gradebook attempt itself. And the other options here, mouse movement, scrolling, clicking, these might be important to you in certain types of exams. The environmental abnormalities are going to include audio levels, head and eye movement, again, leaving the room when it's done, being tested, and multi-face. These are things that the camera and microphone will capture. And then the technical abnormalities will give you more information about the exam duration. Some students may test very quickly, some may take longer, and it'll give you an idea of how that works. Start and end times give you an idea of what students started at exactly the same time. If the test is only open for a limited time, this may not be as important. And then exam conclusion will let you know who took the exam at the same time on the same network. So unless they're siblings living together or maybe in a dorm together, you know, you wouldn't expect to see students testing on the same IP address at exactly the same time. So you can always update those and go back to the grade book, and then your suspicion levels will be updated and you can start reviewing from there. The next tab is going to give you just a general location of this where the test was taken based on IP address. This is a demo account, so I took it all from the same spot. If you have students, you know, spread out, you'll have quite a big map. Display options is going to allow you what is going to show in this view. So down at the very bottom, you're going to see FERPA controls. If you have to share this gradebook with anybody, you can always hide personally identifiable information. And then the other things just allow you to control what is shown. So you can see right up front if there were potential hardware issues, suspicious IDs, which we saw there was one. There'll be additional flags that are displayed. You can sort by last name if you'd rather not sort by suspicion level if you're looking for a particular student. Display help icons will turn these links off for you. Infinite PDF, I'll discuss in the export options. And show unmatched attempts, I always recommend leaving this on. If for some reason a student logged in, say with a different email address or updated their Canvas login, there's a potential that we wouldn't be able to connect them to their exam. We would still record it and it would be listed down here as an unmatched attempt, so you could still find it. Oh, I forgot to mention the most important thing, the gradebook tour. So the first time you log into when you have your extension enabled and you log into the gradebook for the first time, you'll see a short video that's going to explain kind of what I'm explaining right now. If you want to go back and review it, say at the start of next semester, you can always come back here and watch the video again. That's where you find it. Finally, the export options. This is if you wanted to export a PDF of the entire gradebook. It would be a rather large file, and that's where Infinite PDF comes in. If you select that, it should help you download the entire file. You can decide what you want to pull and generate a PDF. And finally, you can also download all the ID images from the that were captured from the students as well. Now let's go back to the gradebook and click into an individual attempt. If you just select that line, it will load all the recording options that were selected for the exam settings. In this first video is always going to be, or in this first screen here, it's always going to be the video recording, and it will have the audio as well if you had that selected. This secondary screen is going to default to the screen recording if you had that selected. These are your playback controls. If you play the video, it'll play a little bit sped up, 6 frames a second, I think, and it's also going to show you exactly what the student was seeing throughout as well. So for screen recording, that's what's going to default there. If you want to see something else, say, I'm going to go ahead and pause this and click on these icons. This is the incident log, which is going to give you a written description of why the student was flagged. This is where the room scan would display. If you had that selected, it would play there. Again, the screen recording. Here's an individual map for where this attempt was taken, general location by IP address, including what type of internet they were using. These are the annotations where you can leave a note for yourself, or if you have a TA reviewing, they could leave a note for you. Student looked away. You can color code those annotations by suspicion level, and then they will, once saved, appear in the incident log and on the frame here. This is where the ID would be displayed. It's going to show you a clear picture of student's ID along with a picture of their face for your verification. And finally, this is the individual export option. If you had to export a student's attempt for academic review or potentially to share with the student, you could decide exactly what you wanted to export. This is where the annotations come in real handy. If you wanted to export a list of those, they would be included as well. And then generate. Again, if it's a large PDF, you can always go here and select Infinite PDF. That's just going to help you download it. As you can see down below, there's kind of 2 time frame options. The bottom one is going to be larger chunks of time. You can drag this shuttle across to get where you need to go. They're going to be color coded based on suspicion level. And then up above is a little bit smaller increments of time. Again, color coded. When they start to get more suspicious, you can click on the flag and see exactly what was going on. Down below, you're going to see the attempt ended message. This will let you know why the attempt ended. In this case, the test taker submitted the exam. If the student lost connection, it would say they disconnected from Proctorio for 2 minutes. It'll give you a list of reasons why the exam or the attempt ended. Actually clicking into the help and support here, this tells more about those messages. That is super helpful. So I recommend just reviewing those so you can kind of get an idea of all of the different messages and what they mean. This is where the web traffic is displayed if you chose to record that. In this case, the student visited 11 websites during the exam. You can either click into the URL or export it if you need it. These are the abnormalities for the individual attempt. You had chosen these in the behavior settings, and this is where you can see how they compare to other students that took the exam. And finally, the computer performance index. This lets you know the student had decent overall performance, good internet, good computer. If a student came to you and said, you know, I really struggled because my internet was bad, you could come here and kind of verify that information to help you decide if you wanted to give them another attempt or not. And then this is the very detailed information on the computer performance index. I can't explain it because I don't understand it, but if you do, it's interesting and maybe helpful to you. Ideally or ultimately, this information is collected and just given to you in this report so you can make the best decision about if the student was acting with academic integrity or not. It's kind of a learning curve in the beginning as you get used to, you know, what the different suspicion levels are and how to set your behavior settings that work best for you. But the great thing is you can play around with it and find out what works best for you to make those decisions. Do you guys have any questions on the grade book? Anything I can review or go over for you again? I just saw your message here. If students do not get a report on their own, this would be something that you, the only way they would see it is if you chose to share it with them. If you did see things that were out of the ordinary and you looked at the video and it was, you know, something that you were having a hard time determining, I mean, based on how you would normally do it, I would reach out to the student and maybe try to get more information. As the semester goes on, you'll begin to see, you know, certain students do things more than other students just based on, you know, individualism. And so you can kind of get a better gauge on what, when you look at something, oh yes, I know the student always listens to music, or, you know, whatever might be flagged for them most often. Let's go into the student side now. If there's no questions on the gradebook, I'll just give you one more second to chime in if you wanted to see anything else in the gradebook. And then that's correct. It only deletes the Proctorio gradebook, not the Canvas gradebook. Slavica, I have a student quiz I can share on the student side.
So you want to take the exam?
Okay. So I will log in as a student and you guys can see exactly what the students will see when they begin an exam with Proctorio enabled.
Let me just quickly answer on one question. Yeah, we shared all our guides. Maybe just double check with Nick and Tom. But we have one guide that explains how to check equipment and how to download Proctorio.
All right, so when a student is going to take an exam, I've taken this one a few times, so it's asking me to resume at this time. I think I just left my attempt last time. I have these settings set up so that they are pretty lenient. Proctorio is not designed to run along with Zoom. So typically if you have all the most restrictive settings on, you'll be kicked out immediately. You know, the tabs will reload and stuff. So I have pretty lenient settings here, but this will give you a good idea about what it looks like when a student begins an exam. So they're going to get this page to start. Before you begin, this exam will be monitored by Proctorio. Here's what you should know. And then this information is going to be customized based on the settings that you have chosen, the exam settings. So during the exam, the following will be restricted. It'll tell you that if you lose connectivity, the exam will end. Your clipboard will be disabled. Your browser cache will be cleared once you submit your exam. You'll not be allowed to right click, you'll not be allowed to print. So anything else that you may have selected is going to be listed here. In this, the following information will be collected during the exam. It lets them know that anything that we hear on the microphone, the webcam, it's gonna know your location based on IP address, you know, all the things that are going to be accessed throughout the exam. Here's some accessibility options. If students need high visibility mode or more information, they can click there. And then in my case, you know, I have more monitors and tabs running. So it's saying, you know, you can still take your exam, but we recommend closing any open tabs. If you didn't have close open tabs selected, this is the message you get. Otherwise, it would just ask you to close them. So you can start the exam pre-checks. It sends you through a system diagnostics test. It asks you which screen you want to share. If you don't have to remove your other monitor, which I didn't. And then the student's going to see themselves here. This is exactly what they're going to see throughout the exam, and this is what's going to be presented to you in your recording. It gives you some friendly advice, and then they will click next to go through the ID check, which I don't have an ID handy. I do have this awesome Target gift card. Takes a steady hand. Takes a picture. And then it's going to take me through the webcam image test. This is going to take the picture that's provided along with the ID. And then this is the statement. If you have selected verify signature, it'll ask the students to sign with their mouse. I didn't have that selected, so I will accept and begin exam now, at which point students enter their exam. So as long as everything's working correctly, it just takes a minute or two. Again, that's before the exam actually starts. If you had room scan selected, I believe that happens after the exam starts, so you want to give a few additional minutes for that. The student can see themselves throughout the exam, what's being recorded. They can make it bigger or smaller. This is access to the live chat if they have technical issues or questions. These are the in-quiz tools, the calculator, and the whiteboard. Again, it's just basic. You can type if you need to take notes throughout the exam. And you can delete it. It actually gets deleted once the exam is submitted anyways. If you came in again, it would be clear. And finally, if this is too distracting, students can collapse and there'll just be a bubble there. Everything's still the same. They still have access to all the same stuff. It just goes away so they have more clear screen here. Then they just finish their exam as usual and submit. I'm not going to submit because again, that will kick me out of this meeting. But that's kind of what it looks like on the student side. Any questions on the student side?
When it comes to financial calculator, I'm not quite sure. We have two different calculators, basic and scientific one, but we'll have to check what's happening with financial calculator, whether we have that in our roadmap. Of course.
So this is Tom. I think one of the pieces of advice I read earlier in the chat was from Amy, from you recommending that they each create a kind of a test exam or an unscored unlimited attempt exam for the students to be able to test with and get started with. Is that right?
That's correct. If you create a practice exam, again, scoreless exam, unlimited attempts, you can keep it open all semester, then students will be able to go in and test their equipment at any time to make sure that they're set up and ready to go with Proctorio. It just helps ease the stress a bit of having to do that in kind of a high stakes testing environment. You know, likely once they do it one time, they're going to feel comfortable with it and it's okay, but maybe they're testing from another computer or they got a new webcam. This would allow them to go in at any time and just make sure that they can still get in okay with no problem. Typically, we suggest making the questions, how do you contact Proctorio support? Because ideally, if a student is having a technical issue, they really are going to have the best luck by contacting our support so we can help walk them through the troubleshooting steps. Via live chat or support@proctorio.com via email. If they're having a hard time getting into their tests with Proctorio, emailing their instructor is going to be the slowest way to get help. The live chat is going to be able to quickly help get them going. So we always recommend just really stressing that with students, make sure to know how to contact live chat, be it from our website or from their exam if they're able to get in.
And just a reminder, Butler folks, that right now this Proctorio tool is only compatible with the classic quiz tool in Canvas. So there's two different quiz engines, and my understanding is that at some point in time the new quiz tool will be compatible as well.
Exactly.
That's correct. We'll keep you posted on that. Here's another question in the chat. Is there a Proctorio mechanism for chat with the instructor for unclear questions, etc.? No, there isn't. If a student reaches out to our chat with questions about the exam, unfortunately, we don't have access to the content. We can only answer things like, you know, the time limit, or if the instructor allows multiple attempts, you know, more specific questions about the settings. We don't have a chat option for the instructor, though. I mean, I would say suggestions for dealing with that is just make sure your instructions are very clear. You know, if students have questions, you know, while they're taking the exam about the exam questions, you know, I think you would, if they emailed you and you were willing to give them another attempt, you know, that's kind of the solution there. I'm not certain many instructors would want to live chat with their students, but yeah, it would simply have to be, you know, emailing you after the fact. To monitor students from using additional devices, I would definitely recommend using the intelligence scan. You know, let the students know in the instructions exactly what you expect for their testing environment, what you don't want to see, and then let them know they're going to be prompted to scan at start, and then they'll be prompted randomly throughout the exam. So, you know, by having that, hopefully students will know better than to try to use other devices, or they'll be caught you know, during that room scan. That's what I would advise for you to use. Sure thing. Well, if there's any other questions, you know, definitely I would recommend to all of you when you're setting up your practice exam to just reach out to the live chat at least once to kind of get in the habit of doing that, so you kind of know that how helpful they are. I know Tom and Nick will share those guides with you guys as well, or the other resources that they have. It looks like they put that link in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Slavica and I if there's anything between those two things that aren't covered. Slavica, what's the typical wait time for chat response? It's usually pretty immediate, right?
Yes, it is somewhere between 4 and 6 seconds.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, since it's the same on the student and the instructor side, that's a great thing for you to just get familiar with, so you know how easy it is to contact live support, and encourage your students to use that as well. Well, we appreciate everyone's time today. If there's no more questions, we can go ahead and give you back a few minutes of your day. If there's anything else, just feel free to reach out. We're happy to help.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Slavica. So yeah, this is Tom. Again, everyone on this call, we will send out a recording link to each of you. And we will be having additional Proctorio training in the coming weeks. I know some of you are in LSB and they use third-party publishing tools as well that need to integrate, and we can help cover some of that as well. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.